The Tennessee Titans get no respect from the national media. What has to happen for that to change? I'll tell you on today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast.
You are Locked On Titans, your daily Tennessee Titans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Titans podcast. I am your host, Tyler Rowland. Titans fans, we got a mailbag episode to cap off the week. I'm answering your guys' questions, and you have some great ones. One, what has to happen for the Tennessee Titans to get some respect? I'll give you my answer also, a fantasy football sleeper for the Titans, and a bold prediction that Will Levis goes over 4,000 yards. I'll get to all of that before I do. Thank you for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen each and every day. Remember, Monday through Friday, Tennessee Titans content all year round, always for free. You're not going to beat that anywhere else. Make sure that you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day here on the Locked On Titans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Shout out to my everydayers out there tuning in Monday through Friday. Couldn't do it without you guys. I've got some great content planned for you guys in the next few weeks. Next week is going to be roster week. Now that we know the Titans roster for training camp, I'm really going to dive into my analysis of the talent level, where they rank. We're going to have AFC South week as well, where I go through all the other division rivals, rank the Titans against them at different positions. It's going to be a lot of fun and a lot more content as well. Before we get in, do want to remind you I am your host, Tyler Rowland, 25 years as a Tennessee Titans fanatic. I've covered the team for USA Today, Sports Illustrated, and I've been the host of the #1 Tennessee Titans podcast in the world for 5 seasons running now. But with that being said, let's get into your questions for today's mailbag. Trevor Prez says, what are the bare minimum requirements that land the Tennessee Titans on the sports media's radar after this season is over? Okay, so the Titans, as I mentioned at the beginning, the Titans seem to get no respect nationally. They're not a well-covered team. And I could tell you that they just need to win. They just need to win. But the reality is, since the Tennessee Titans and since the NFL kind of reassessed everything and moved the divisions around when the Texans came in, since the realignment, that's the word I was looking for, the Titans have been one of the top 8 most winning teams in the NFL, if you look at just wins. So it's not just winning. For me, it is style. The Titans need to play a style of football that's entertaining. The Titans need to throw the ball. They need to come and be a modern football team. So yes, they need to win, but they also need to play a style of football that's exciting to watch for a casual fan that isn't a Tennessee Titans fan. And also, they need some stars. They need some guys who get people excited. They had Derrick Henry, but outside of that, who was really a guy that got the casual fan excited to watch the Tennessee Titans? So they need some stars. They need to play the right style of football, and they need both of those things to happen while they win games. That is the combination that gets the Titans more media respect. Cooper Martin says, where do you rank the Titans out of the 32 teams? Doing my own power rankings, I didn't sit down and make like a full list out of this, but I would say the Titans are probably right now, and I think they could go up, of course, but right now I would say they're anywhere from like 18 to 24. That seems fair. Gumbungus says, after OTAs, do you believe more in our vision that Rand and Callie are going for? What are your biggest concerns or questions you still have? Yes, I believe in the vision. I believe this team, not only Rand and Callie, but the entire organization is going in the right direction. What are the biggest concerns? Well, we'll talk a little bit about that. Is this team going to be physical enough? You have to find a balance of playing that modern football that we talk about, stopping the pass, throwing the ball. But at the end of the day, when you get to the playoffs, you still have to have a certain level of physicality. And I just wonder, with the offensive line being young, the defensive line being not that good, will the Titans be able to do that? So those are my biggest questions and concerns right there. Matt says, thinking about buying season tickets for this year, should I hold off until next year so the team can work out any kinks and get familiar with the new offense? Matt, if you can afford season tickets, do it this year. Do it this year and see it begin. You know, to me, it would be like if you just sat down and watched The Dark Knight. Well, that's a really good movie. You'll probably enjoy that. But knowing that it came from Batman Begins, the prequel of that, that makes the story even better to have the full character arc. So if you can afford it, I would get season tickets this year. Ye Old MF says, under our new head coach and defensive coordinator, what should we expect from some big name starters on both offense and defense? I think Jeffrey Simmons finally goes over 10 sacks. I think Harold Landry has over 10 sacks. I think that Will Levis throws for a bunch of yards, and I think we're going to have some really good wide receiver play. I think that Levis is going to be a Pro Bowler, whether it's an alternate or whatever he's going to be in. I think Simmons is a Pro Bowler. I think Calvin Ridley ends up as a Pro Bowler as well. Logan Chase says, Callie mentioned Mason and Malik would play a lot in the preseason. Do you think we get a good look at our starters in the preseason at all with all the new schemes and coaches? In the past, our starters played like one drive, and wonder if that'll change at all. I'm not certain that will change, to be honest with you. I think around the NFL, you're seeing less and less coaches actually want to play their starters a decent amount in the preseason. I personally, like I said during Mike Vrabel's tenure, and I will say it this year as well, the Titans need to play a little bit. The starters need like one full half in the third game. To me, that not just one drive, two drives, and then they're out by the end of the first quarter. No, they need to play a full half. This is a brand new system, brand new players, brand new coaches, a lot of young players as well. The Titans need to be ready to go. They always lose week one. They always lose week one under Mike Vrabel because they were simply not ready to go. So I think the Titans need to play. I'm not asking for, playing in game 2 or anything like that, but let's play a full first half in that third preseason game and get ready to play. D Money says, what are some Titans-related bets that you would hypothetically take? Okay, so I would go to FanDuel for you guys. FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook. Check out all they have. But the Titans over-under on wins for FanDuel right now is 7.5. I love the Titans over on that. I think the Titans are going to win over 7 games. I really do. I think they're going to win 8 or 9 games is how I would call it right now. So I like the odds on that. Also, if you can get it, not every state, my state doesn't have some of those things, but I know a lot of you guys do. The over on Will Levis passing yards. I'm going to make a bold prediction later of how far I think Will Levis can go with the yardage totals, but the Titans are going to throw the ball, and Will Levis throws the ball down the field a ton. So even if it's not a great completion percentage this year, he's not completing 70% of his passes. When he does complete passes, they're going to get yards. So I think the Titans are going to rack up yards, and Levis is going to rack up yards. So I like the over on Will Levis's yardage totals. But with that being said, I got more questions to answer from you guys. There are a lot of them, so we're going to fly through them. Before we do, though, do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, the winning formula for championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers to roof racks to exhaust kits to LED headlights and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your #1 ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it makes it easy to make your car the MVP. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Titans fans, let's continue today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. I'm answering your mailbag questions to cap off this week. We talked about the Titans getting no respect from the media, mentioned some bets on the Titans that I like this year. But now we got some more questions, starting with, who is my fantasy football sleeper for the Tennessee Titans? Before I answer that, thanks again for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen each and every day. Remember, it's your team every day here on the Locked On Titans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. My fantasy football sleeper for the Titans is Josh Whyle, the tight end. I think if Whyle takes a starting role for the Titans, the connection he has with Will Levis, they're best buds. They have been since they were drafted together. I think that Josh Whyle could be a fantasy football sleeper. Okay, if you're in deeper leagues, you're looking for guys on the waiver during the season. I'm not drafting Josh Whyle, but I would just tell you to keep your eye on him. Mario says, and that was from Tiny Desk Submission, the fantasy football sleeper question. So Mario says, free agent signing you're most excited to watch, coach and player. Player is Calvin Ridley. I've said that since the start. I think Calvin Ridley's going to be amazing this year. And then coach, obviously, Bill Callahan. I mean, if you say anything other than that, you're just not being honest. Juice, I believe the name was Juice, got a Celtics logo. Hate seeing that Celtics logo. God, that finals is over. So annoyed that the Celtics are going to win the finals. Just so dumb. And the Lakers are getting embarrassed with Dan Hurley. It's just a tough time to be a Lakers fan, man. I'll tell you that much. But I'm sure no one pities me seeing 6 titles in my lifetime. But anyways, Juice says, if you were GM, well, I'm getting paid a lot more now. Knowing what you know now with J.C. Latham, who are you selecting at 7 if Alt is still on the board? Look, I will tell you that I believe that I was wrong about my Roma Dunze preference. I think J.C. Latham was the better pick over Roma Dunze at this point. I think I was wrong on that, but I would still take Joe Alt. Tighten up numbers says it's tighten up and then some numbers. Says, big fan and everyday listener for years now. Thank you so much. Couldn't do it without you. But my question is, who's the one player that needs to step up this year, both offense and defense? To me, it's Will Levis. Levis has to step up and be the quarterback of the future that we hoped he would be. He's got to carry this team at times. And then on defense, it's got to be Jeffrey Simmons. He's had some injury issues over the last few years. He's missed some games. His production went down a little bit 2 years ago when he was injured at the back half of the year. He needs to be an all-world, all-pro level player. That's what he needs to do this year. So the 2 best players on the team need to be the 2 best players on the team. Jason Nobbin says, what do you think is the most important missing piece on this roster besides free safety? Is it right tackle or another edge? To me, it's an edge rusher. If they had a starting caliber edge rusher across from Harold Landry, they would have Arden Key in the 3rd edge rusher role, which is where he needs to be. Rashad Weaver in the 4th edge rusher role, which is where he needs to be. They're missing a starting edge. They do not have 2 starting edge rushers. Patrick Crawford kind of followed that up and said, what do you think about the edge position? I know our interior is good, but you think the secondary jamming is our only hope for pressures and sacks? Also, with Levis in his sophomore season, how confident are you in him to lead this team with unproven line and older wide receivers? I think Levis can lead. I think he's got all the qualities that you want to be a leader. It's about whether he can process things fast enough on the field and make accurate throws. I just explained how I feel about edge rusher. It is the biggest need for the Titans going into next year. Edge rusher. They need another edge desperately. Zach Story says, is run defense a growing concern due to the lack of depth on the interior defensive line? Questions at inside linebacker, questions at safety. We invested so heavily in pass defense, which I fear might encourage teams to gouge us on the ground. I don't care. You're right. I think you're right about that, Zach. They probably will be much worse in the ground game. But I shared a graph a few months ago. It was just some data. I think it was what is it? RYOE, rush yards over expected, pass yards over expected, rush yards allowed over expected, pass yards allowed over expected. It took all 4 of those things. So basically your pass offense, your pass defense, your run defense, your run offense. It took all that together. And they went and they looked at previous Super Bowl champions and how good those teams were in those 4 categories. And if you look, there is a strong correlation between pass offense and pass defense. Those are the most important things that you need to be a Super Bowl team. So, yes, the Titans probably aren't going to be as good in run defense as they were against Mike Vrabel, because Mike Vrabel thought that running the ball and stopping the run was the most important parts of the team. Well, that's wrong. The data bears it out. I'll try to find that graph and maybe share it again on Friday when this comes out. I think I have it in my bookmark somewhere in my data folder. So I'll try to put that back out. But yeah, you're right. They're probably going to want to run the ball. But that's why Tavondre Sweat is so important. Because if Tavondre Sweat can do what T.R. Tart did and be the nose tackle in nickel, and the Titans can stop the run in nickel while also being better at pass defense and throwing the ball, well, now you're cooking. And one thing that really helps being good in the run is being good in the pass and scoring points and getting up on teams, and then you're able to run the ball more. So I'm just, you're right, Zach, but I'm just not that concerned about that. You know what I mean? Like, let's stop the pass. Let's throw the ball, and then we'll see what happens from there. Dan says, we all want Will to be the guy. What is your lowest acceptable quarterback comparison for him this season to consider him worth sticking around? Does it concern you for life after Folk, Nick Folk? We've been haunted before. No, I'm not worried for life after Nick Folk. Nick Folk's solid, but like, it's not like the Titans have one of the best kickers in the NFL right now. I don't think that that's the case or anything. Folk is good, but yeah. Anyways, it's not like they have Justin Tucker. Okay. And as for Levis, lowest acceptable. I would hate to do like a comparison, I guess, but let's say like the good years of Andy Dalton. You know, I guess that, or like mid-range Carson Wentz. You know, I feel like that is the best comparison I can think of. You know, if he, instead of being a game breaker, somebody who's making crazy plays with his arm and using his legs and, you know, making game-changing plays, if he just doesn't make a lot of mistakes, I think that would be acceptable. Because if he doesn't make a lot of mistakes this year, then you can look at it and be like, hey, he didn't make a lot of mistakes. He didn't kind of break out, you know, and become a really good quarterback, but he's solid and he didn't make a lot of mistakes. And then next year, maybe he takes that big leap. So I would say that is it's more of a philosophical thing than a comparison to an actual player. Dylan Earhart did ask for my all-time starting lineup on offense and defense for the Titans. He said throw special teams in there too. Dylan, I got to tell you, that is way too juicy of a question and way too much of an answer to put right here. So I wanted to shout you out because I appreciate the question, but I'm going to turn that into an actual show, like a full show. I don't want to try to do that in a minute and a half, you know, during this segment. So wanted to shout you out, but good question. I'll answer that later in the summer. Okay. With a full episode, because that's a fun conversation to have. But with that being said, got a lot of questions left. Some individual questions, a bold prediction about Will Levis coming your way. Titans fans, let's cap off today's mailbag edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. We talked about the Titans and how they need to get media respect or national respect. It's not just media, it's fans, all that stuff included. Talked about some fantasy football sleepers. Now I got a bold prediction for you guys in our final segment. But before we get to it, thank you again for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first to listen each and every day. It's your team every day here on the Locked On Titans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Speaking of the Locked On Podcast Network, Locked On has launched the first ever 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. It's called Locked On Sports Today. Literally 24/7 streaming all day. It is a perfect sports companion for your day, covering all the big stories and all the major sports. You get Locked On experts like me for Locked On Titans, breaking down their team's biggest news. You get national shows as well, like Locked On NFL, Locked On NBA, and now it's also on Amazon Fire TV. So make sure that you check out Locked On Sports Today, free on YouTube and Amazon Fire TV channels app. Diving back in here, Bryce Troll says, give me your honest opinion about Will Levis. Do you actually think he is the guy for us? I do. I think that Levis can be the guy. One of the big things that I'll say is I can't tell you and I can't know whether Levis is the guy or not. I can tell you that he is. I can say it as confidently and as passionately as possible, but there's no way anybody can see the future and actually know that. It's a guess. No amount of faith creates truth. No matter how much faith you have in something, it does not mean that it's true. That's just not how this works. So I have faith in Will Levis, but the reasons I have so much faith is because everything he brings to the table. Incredible natural talent. He has one of the best arms in the NFL. He has the personality of the type of obsessive, psychotic competitor that you need to be great in the NFL. So he has everything that you would want and need to be great in the NFL. Will he do it? We'll see. But I think he can be because he has the ability. McKnight58 says, what's a bold prediction storyline that you think will happen this year that no one is talking about or seeing coming? Doesn't have to be Titans. I'll make it Titans because, it's a Titan show. But Will Levis thrown for 4,000 yards. Like, if things break right for the Titans, Levis could lead the NFL in passing yards. Like, I don't think that that's that crazy. I think that could happen. It would have to take a lot of things breaking right, but that could happen. Now, on the flip side, PV Crook says, worst case scenario, Titans get a top 5 pick and have to replace Will Levis. Let's say Will Levis is terrible or whatever. Who are you going with? Shadur Sanders, Carson Beck, Quinn Ewers? I think I would go with Carson Beck right now. But let me just say this. A guy that I'm looking at, Jackson Dart from Ole Miss. Interesting. Not a strong draft class coming up. PV says you're 100% about right about that, man. It's not a very strong class, but we never know. We'll see how these guys do. Owen Bloomhagen says, what is a reasonable time period to expect Will Levis to get acclimated to this new offense? I would say the first month of the season. I expect the Titans to come out a little bumpy. It's gonna take some time, but I'll say the first month of the season. After that first month of September, Levis better be playing better. Like that seems reasonable. Tennessee Titans Talk said, realistically, what would Treylon Burks have to do this season to get a new contract? Well, it wouldn't be a new contract because he's going into his 3rd year, and they're definitely not going to extend him. But after that, I would say that Burks needs to have like 800 yards, like 60 catches, 2, 3, 4 touchdowns. Like he needs to look like he's worth it. Keaton said, what would Treylon Burks need to do in order to flip the narrative on him and be considered for a 5th-year option? Again, I think 800 yards, about 50 to 60 catches. He needs to make big plays and look like he belongs and stay healthy. That's number one. Tanner Conrad said, who do you see starting on the right side of the offensive line, both right guard, right tackle? I'm going to go Sadiq Charles and Nicholas Petit-Ferrer. Connor Meyerhofer, of all the roster bubble players, who do you hope makes the team based off their upside? I will say James Williams, the 7th round rookie linebacker. I just think he's got a ton of potential. I hope he makes the roster. Dale Big Sam, my guy, says, what do you think are reasonable expectations for Tajay Spears this season? Is hoping for 12,000 scrimmage yards too much? No, I don't think it is. I don't think it's too much. I think Tajay Spears could go for, 800 to 1,000 rushing yards, throw in 200 to 300 and passing yards, maybe 400 in passing yards. I think he absolutely should go over 1,000 scrimmage yards, and 1,200 would be a great year. KSO Spoken says, given Sweat being a bust, stop, man. I'm as big of a Sweat hater as you're going to find. You can't call Sweat a bust already. Come on now. Don't do that. Who would you reach out to for trades for before the trade deadline if all options are on the table, given the money right away? If Burks one, you say those two things like they're connected, like Sweat and then trade. I'm not trading for any nose tackles. That's part of the reason I didn't like the Sweat pick in the first place. I'm not taking a run-stuffing nose tackle that isn't going to play 75% of the snaps. I'm not taking that early in the draft. So I'm not trading anything for a nose tackle. We'll pick one up off the scrap heap and be fine. Tier Tart was an undrafted free agent. Like, you don't need to do that. Trade for an edge rusher if you want to make a trade. That's what you do. If Burks catches gear in special teams and earns more time at wide receiver, whose routes is he running more? I would say it would be more DeAndre Hopkins and more Tyler Boyd. He would be at X a little bit and in the slot a little bit more. I think Calvin Ridley's skill set and his position is too hard to replace, so he needs to be on the field the most. Christian Tomas says, why in the heck are we still worrying about T'Vondre Sweat? Just leave the man alone. Let me just say this, Christian. I don't know if you've noticed this, but every single Titans anything, any podcast, any radio show in Nashville, any articles that are being written are talking about T'Vondre Sweat because that is the biggest story. One of the biggest disconnects that I find between, this is going to sound conceited, and it is what it is, but think to yourselves why I'm good at this. Why do I do a good job on this podcast? Why is this the number one podcast for the Titans in the world? Why did I take this podcast from making me $90 a month to my literal career that pays my bills so I could buy a house and go on vacations? How have I done that? The reason, Christian, is because I know what to talk about. I am great at picking what to talk about. Some of you guys complain about why you talk about this so much, why you talk about that so much, blah, 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 blah. My topic selection, me choosing what we're going to talk about each day and for each segment, that is my best trait. I know what people want to hear. I always have since I was a child. I'm an entertainer. It's what I was meant to do. So people want to talk about T'Vondre Sweat because he's missing time. He's not out there. It's a concern. No, he's not a bust. I already said that earlier. But when you guys come to me and you say, hey, quit talking about this. Why are you talking about this so much? Blah, blah, blah. Just know that the reason that I am good at this job is because I know what to talk about. If you guys got on here and tried to do shows about undrafted free agents and roster bubble guys all summer long, you would get no views at all. So you may think that we've talked about T'Vondre Sweat too much and we've worried about T'Vondre Sweat too much, but I promise you that the majority of people who listen to my show want to talk and hear about the things that I talk about, okay? So I appreciate the question, but the real answer is because I know what people want to hear. That's why we're still talking about T'Vondre Sweat. And if you aren't a little concerned about Sweat, well, you got your head in the sand, in my opinion. So Tyrell Lockett says, do we get Justin Simmons? If not, who's another option? I don't think the Titans signed Justin Simmons. I think Quandre Diggs or Eddie Jackson would be a good option now with Marcus May off the board. Austin says, if Simmons doesn't sign with the Titans, who's your next top free safety? Oh, I just answered that. Quandre Diggs, Eddie Jackson. Joseph asked, who are some of your favorite prospects in next year's draft? I'm really not up enough on next year's draft class to answer that. I know there's an edge rusher out of Tennessee that I really like. Luther Burden, the wide receiver out of Mizzou, I like him a lot too. That's all I'm comfortable saying right now. Pierce is the guy from Tennessee, the edge rusher. Cody Weath, shout out Cody. Who's your current player in the NFL or player still young enough to play that you would like to see get a legitimate shot in the UFL? Cody, I don't know that I understand the question. If the player is in the NFL, why would I want them to go to the UFL? They're in the NFL. Well, the UFL is a downgrade. So to me, that would only make sense in the other direction. Who is a player in the UFL who I want to see a shot get in the NFL? I don't quite understand the way you phrase the question. I would say Malik Willis, I guess. I'd like to see Malik Willis play in the UFL and see if he's any better down there. Franco said, who starts at quarterback for Ohio State this year? I don't know. I don't think any of them are very good. Ryan Smith said, not Titans relating, but if you want to touch on it, favorite vacation spots ranked 1 to 5. Okay, so number one, I haven't traveled a lot, guys. I'll just give you that. I was really poor growing up, really poor in my early 20s. So I didn't travel as a kid with my family. We didn't have money to do that. It took me a while to get out of a poverty mindset and to make decent money through my 20s. I mean, I didn't really make decent money at all until I was 30. So I loved Chicago. I loved Chicago. I'm a big city guy. I like food, drinks, architecture, stuff like that. I hate camping, hate fishing, hate hunting. I don't do any of that outdoorsy stuff. Don't enjoy it. I'm either going to a beach or I'm going to a big city. That's all there is for me. I loved the Bahamas. I was on a cruise. Cruises, whatever. I'm not a big cruise guy. I don't like being trapped on the boat. But when we went to the Bahamas, really beautiful. Really enjoyed that. Disney was fantastic. I just got home from Disney a couple weeks ago. It literally exceeded expectations. But I'm a very creative guy. I have a childlike wonder to me. So that allowed me to enjoy Disney. Maybe some of you kind of more serious people would enjoy it. Other than that, Gatlinburg is fun. I enjoy like Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge, because you do get the nature vibes with the mountains and stuff, but there's still like stuff to do. I get really bored with the outdoors. So, yeah. And then I went to Panama City Beach back when I was in college and high school for spring break. And that's not for everybody, but if you're somebody who's young and you want to go on spring break and have a good time, Panama City Beach is freaking awesome. But again, I haven't traveled a lot, so I'm probably not the right guy to ask. Ryan Smith said, or that was Ryan Smith. Eric Callahan said, how did you get into football media world? Knowing what you do now, what would you do differently? I would just start earlier. I dropped out of college because I didn't have money while I got sent home. After my second year, I had the best internship on campus. I was the top sports journalism student in my class. I was balling at college, but I was poor. I was, you had to move off campus. I couldn't afford it. I sold my car for books for 1 quarter of school. Out of the 6 quarters I was there, I had to sell my car just so I could afford books. College is such a predatory system in our country. It's disgusting, quite honestly. But that's a conversation for a different day. But I went to journalism school, sports journalism school at one of the best journalism programs in the country for 3 years. I was dominating. I was balling. Had the best sports journalism internship on campus. Over the summer, I was doing fantastic. I didn't come home because I failed. I came home because I was poor. And our country is just in a terrible spot. But after that, it took me a while to get back on my horse. I was so sad and depressed that my dream didn't work out. I thought I should be on ESPN right now. I should be doing this. I should be doing that, blah, blah, blah. So in my mid-20s, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to use my creativeness. I had to have an outlet for that. So I started writing for a website for free. It was called like Big Blue Stampede or something like that. And I wrote about the Titans for free for a season. Me and my friends started doing like streams where we would play video games and talk about sports at the same time. Bill Simmons stole my idea, by the way. It was my idea first. So I did that, and that was kind of just cool in my local area with the people I grew up with and stuff like that, But then I got fired from my day job for nothing that I did. The owner of the company was a moron and made a stupid mistake with my client, and I got fired. And the Locked On Titans show hadn't had an episode come out in 3 months because the people who used to do Locked On Titans quit. Big mistake, by the way. So I knew that Locked On Titans hadn't come out in 3 months. I knew that I had the talent and some experience, and I sent an email. I knocked on a door, and David Locke answered, and I knocked my interview out of the park. I went above and beyond. He asked for a 10-minute segment to do a tryout. I gave him a full 20-minute show with fake commercials, and I had music in it, and I just went above and be a tryhard. So many people in this world act like it's cool to not care. Care deeply. Care more about everything than everyone else, and it will work out with you. So never let your friends or people around you act like giving a darn is a bad thing or something to make fun of. So many people do that. Man, you care so much. Blah, blah, blah. Yes, I do. I care passionately about everything. And that has benefited me a ton in life. So that's how I got in. I had experience, I had talent, and I kicked down doors until somebody paid me to do it. Josh Murbit said, what are you doing for fun right now with the Titans NFL news slowing down a bit? I like to go kayaking. I guess that is the one outdoorsy thing I like to do. I love going kayaking down the river. Love that. I play a ton of golf. I love golf. I do. I suck, man. I suck, but I love playing golf. And then trying to catch up on like movies and shows because I don't watch a lot of that. And I'm going back and playing Ghost of Tsushima until NCAA college football, the new one, comes out in July. So I'm going back to play my favorite story game of all time, Ghost of Tsushima. JT says, who won, Drake or K-Dot? Listen, I thought Drake's songs were better, but I'm a Drake stan, and anyone who's been listening for a while knows it. So Drake is my favorite artist of all time and always will be. I thought Drake's songs were better. Family Matters is the best song that came out of any of those. Sorry, I know everyone's going to say Not Like Us, whatever. I don't think that song's that great. I don't like the beat. I don't think Kendrick's bars are that great. I hate his little accents. It's like knockoff. Like Meet the Grams was terrible. Euphoria was good. I'll give him that. But listen, public perception is that Kendrick won. So I could say I thought Drake won, but you know, if I'm one guy and 1,000 people are saying Kendrick won, well, then Kendrick won. But I think if you look at it like an NBA Finals, it was 4-3. It went to Game 7. So I'm proud of Drake's effort there. Everybody said he would get washed. He's just a singer. He's just a, pop star, blah, blah, blah. Well, I thought Drake was balling. And if Family Matters didn't get cut down, great move by Kendrick. Got to give him credit there. He put out 2 songs immediately after Family Matters came out. Family Matters didn't have time to breathe, and it didn't get the credit that it deserves because it was the best song that came out. And then Andrew Geisler, my guy, said, non-Titans football relate. What are your favorite toppings on a hot dog and a hamburger? One's got to be a cheeseburger. I ain't eating hamburgers. Got to have cheese on it. Hot dog, ketchup, mustard. I'm good. If you want to get crazy, the crispy onions that you get for like a green bean casserole, throw those on top. Very good. And then hamburger, I am a classic double cheeseburger guy. Mustard, ketchup, pickles, onions, and I'm happy. But with that being said, that's going to do it. This is a long one. I'm going to get in trouble. But that's going to do it for me today, folks. As always, I am your host, Tyler Rowland, and this was Locked On Titans.